Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, my name is Dean. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and this is Inside Addiction. Welcome. We're joined today by Father Hogan, President of the Board, and Tricia Stamfleet, Executive Director of New Choices Recovery Center. Welcome.
Thank you.
Father Hogan, Trish, thank you for being with us. Why don't you tell us about New Choices?
New Choices Recovery Center is an addiction treatment center which has the full continuum of care from day rehab to outpatient to 3 community residences. We have the largest Shelter Plus Care program in the Northeast. It's a 59-unit program that really helps people after they leave a community residence learn to live independently with case management. We have a drinking driver program. Our main building is located on 302 State Street. Our apartments are scattered site, and our community residents are also scattered site.
The Bridge?
We are also in a management contract with the Bridge Center, which is a 24-bed intensive residential program where people go in and actually all the services are treated right in the Bridge Center, and that's located on Union Street.
How long have you worked for New Choices?
Well, that's an interesting question. I have been with New Choices now for 4 years. May 25th, 2005, I was an employee of Spark St. Peter's Addiction Recovery Center since 2000, and this agency, which was known as ASACSC, was having a little bit of trouble. They needed a management contract to actually help change the agency around and get it going again. And so I was with St. Peter's from 2005 to 2007 managing New Choices Recovery Center. We changed the name. And then in May 25th, 2007, I came over, left St. Peter's and came over to New Choices full time. Did you want to elaborate on the transition?
No, that was pretty good. We, as she hinted, the agency was in some trouble, right? And what we wanted to do was, in the management contract with Spark, we were able to bring in financial people, public relations people, quality care people, all kinds of things, sort of at the same time, so that we could renovate the whole agency from top to bottom, you know, kind of. And Tricia really has been able to turn the agency around in less than a year. And we're doing pretty well now.
Great.
Yeah.
Any personal connection to recovery for each of you?
Yeah, for me. What I say, 28? 28 years sobriety now.
Great.
So 28 years ago, I died on the emergency room table. And obviously I didn't actually die. But, for me, recovery was one of the most important things in my life. And the rehab actually was one of the most important things in my life. And what I learned and how to change the way I looked at life. And the funny thing is, a lot of people think, well, as a priest, you know, you probably already, you know how to live life and blah, 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 but you don't. In reality, I found that the third step in AA, which is made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God, I fought that a long time because I said, I already did that. And as we moved along, I realized I hadn't really done that at all. That it's a much more profound thing that really changed the way I look at life, look at God, look at people.
Trish?
I also, on February 18th, have 17 years in sobriety.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Ironically, I was living in New York City being a professional artist, and I actually came up here to go to Conifer Park, and then I went back down to New York. So yeah, recovery is really a new lens through which to live life on.
Well, I think it's very important that people understand that recovery works. Now, it doesn't work magic. You have to have some real engagement with it, but it works. And I think Tricia and I are good examples because I couldn't imagine living life without a scotch.
Right.
I couldn't even imagine it. It just, why would you want to live life that way?
How could you?
How could you? How could you? And yet, the real question is, how could you live it with the scotch? You can't.
Were you truly living at all?
Right. Well,
Right.
and I think that, I think addiction to anything, whether it's substance abuse or food or sex or gambling, really is a coping mechanism that was learned in the family of origin. And for me, that's how I coped with pain, depression, anything that I was going through. That helped me become alive. And I think what recovery does is really starts healing from the inside out. So once you really love yourself, have a purpose, which I think a purpose for being alive is so important, then you don't ever want to abuse yourself like that again.
Yeah.
So it just becomes not an option to treat yourself so poorly, where beforehand you couldn't imagine, like Father Hogan was saying, how can you socialize without drinking or drugging? But it really, and I think, I think it's a spiritual issue too, because I think once you do hit bottom, and I really believe it is a spiritual bottom, sure. New Choices kind of pushes that spiritual bottom because most of our people are mandated to treatment. But once you really surrender to the process, that's when you really become well.
How has addiction changed, both being in the field and in recovery yourselves? How has addiction changed? How have you seen addiction change, particularly these substances of choice, drugs of choice, as well as how has treatment changed
Well,
throughout the
I
years?
started out in the field way back in, excuse me, 1970. And I started a place called Hospitality House, which in those days was a therapeutic community, a very harsh TC. And I started it for heroin addicts because nobody was treating drug addicts. Nobody was treating alcoholics really either. And then it branched out. But my first encounter with drugs was heroin. And in those days, heroin addiction created a community of people with their own language, their own culture, their own style. Today, it's not quite the same way. There's heroin addiction, but it doesn't have that community aspect to it at all. Heroin addicts are often on their own, kind of, there's...
It's very ritualistic also,
Yeah.
and I think what we have learned is people really change under positive connotations. So the old school addiction where you just, hammer down, strip them down, shame-based, and bring them back up. We're finding that people who feel connected, who feel cared about, who have pretty strict boundaries, we create for them. We take care of not only their substance abuse, but whatever mental health, whatever family dysfunction that they have, all at the same time, seem to do well. Plus, help them find meaning in their life through employment, through volunteer, through creative activities, through anything. But that's a big piece. We have to help people find meaning in their life, and that's what we do. We do very personalized treatment now based on the individual need. Parent House, which is our 18-bed and community residence, now has what we call an empowerment program.
Okay.
We've also learned through research that it's mind, body, and spirit. It depends on what you eat will determine how well you do in recovery, exercise. So all of that we put into the actual program. So we teach them how to cook healthy, eat healthy. They actually exercise twice a week for an hour and a half. They have their own group every week to talk about how it's going, what their body image is, how it's improved, what their mood is like. I mean, a lot of people are on psychotropic medication, but we really try to help the whole person. The same thing with the men, same thing at the Bridge Center. really try to help the whole person. So I think that's where addiction's changed in a way, where we're taking it from the whole family systems, community, and individual needs.
Yeah. 28 years ago when I was in rehab, my particular rehab was up in Canada, and it was very much that way then. The United States, it seems, took a much longer time, to get to that. But I think we are there now. And yeah, we have new drugs, but addiction, from one point of view anyway, addiction is addiction is addiction, and it consumes you. And that is the critical issue in your life. For me, it was, if I was out at a meeting, did I have enough booze at home? If not, I'd have to leave the meeting, get to the liquor store early so it wouldn't, it's like, and as you look back, you say, this is insanity, And yet it felt perfectly normal to me, and that's the frightening part of it, I think. For the addict, for a long period of time, it feels like life is as normal. This is the way it is.
Sure, yeah. And I know when I was active, I thought everybody in the world did what I did.
Sure.
And no one drinks and does drugs. And are you kidding me?
Right.
That brings me to a question. What are some of the signs, and perhaps somebody's watching, or they themselves, or maybe they have a brother, sister, uncle, aunt. How can someone know and maybe take that first step and come to New Choices and get that intake evaluation and see if they have a problem? What are some signs that somebody may need to seek treatment and may not have a use problem, but an abuse or an addiction?
Well, the easiest thing to do, this is very fundamental. If you're thinking about drinking and you're not drinking, you have a problem. Anyway,
Right.
If you're thinking about gambling and you're not gambling, you have a problem. If your life is disturbed by whatever relationship with whatever addiction you have, then it can be a problem. People don't show up for work or family obligations, or they spend their money on drugs or gambling or sex. Then it's kind of a red flag that they have an appointment. Now, to what extent, that's when you would call for an appointment at New Choices and be evaluated by one of our clinical staff to know what really is going on.
Yeah, and I think when you, for instance, when you have an auto accident and you've been pretty seriously drinking, when you've been arrested for DWI or DUI once or twice, it's time to sit back and say, maybe there's a problem here.
Sure. In addition to the outpatient and the 3 community residences, you folks also have a drinking driver program?
We do. However, all of our referrals for the drinking driver program has to come through motor vehicles.
Okay.
So anybody that does go to a drinking driver program, they are referred from, they have to sign up at their motor vehicles in whatever county they belong. And from there, they're giving a list of the providers that have services.
How about referrals for the outpatient or community residents? What counties, what areas, and how many people does New Choices serve?
We serve every county. And for the community residents, although we do in Bridge Center like to, our first priority is Schenectady County, the people in our own county. However, we do, because we have the community residents, we can get referrals in Bridge Center from anywhere in the county. But Schenectady County is our first preference. They just need to call the main office at 346-4436, and then we can set up a time for them to come in and be evaluated.
How does New Choices differ from other treatment facilities and other agencies? I remember you were speaking of treating the mind, body, and soul in the empowerment program at the Parent House. In what other ways does New Choices differ from other treatment agencies?
Well, firstly, logistically, we have a continuum of care from the day rehab. We do have a day rehab. It's rather large. We're one of the few agencies to have a day rehab. I think it's our philosophy of treatment. I think it's really, we take a holistic approach of treating the individual. It's very personalized treatment. I think it's a very family style. Although we have many patients, everyone knows everybody. Our front end, our secretaries and our anchor of the agency really make it a point to make people feel at home And we constantly create new programs based on what our patients need. So we're very flexible in that regard. We have great relationships with our Office of Community Services, Department of Social Services, parole, probation, the drug courts. We work really hand in hand with our referral sources.
So you have a pretty active role within the community as well.
Right, yes. And we're very much into cultivating all of those contacts, you know, whether it's the drug court or the community services or OASAS, or, you know, we take nothing for granted, you know, and try to work closely with them so that we're all trying to achieve the same thing.
We also have a stellar quality management team, which our patients are a part of, to tell us how can we do something better.
Okay.
How are we doing serving you? What can we do better? What do we do well? What would you like to change? And so actually patients come once a month to our quality management meeting and give their feedback. We do often, you know, negotiate with patients because some things are non-negotiable, some things that we have to do per our license, but they're very active in telling us how we're doing, what we can change, and making suggestions for better services that best meet their needs.
How do you feel about taking criminality out of addiction? And what do you think the future holds for addiction treatment, especially in New York recently with the Rockefeller drug law reform?
Well, I mean, I've been opposed to the Rockefeller drug laws for years. Sometimes it's a delicate balance. I mean, you have somebody who is addicted who commits a crime, and it's maybe a very serious crime, and you can't just fall back on addiction and say, you know, the devil made me do it, kind of, you know. And yet, the tragedy is probably the person may have never done that act unless they were drunk or under the influence or whatever it may be. So it's a really delicate kind of thing, I find, to separate out the crime and the addiction, you know?
And I think recovery is all about taking personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
I think what works well now is the collaboration substance abuse and treatment agencies are having with the criminal justice system to really get people who may commit crimes because they're under the influence the help they need, to take the criminal aspect out of it as a moral issue and really begin to understand that people need treatment, and to let the public know that we know that our patients who may have committed crimes take personal responsibility for what they do.
Right. That taking personal responsibility is really critical, because whether you're under the influence or not, you are the one who committed the act, whatever it may be. But it is very important to realize that things like domestic violence are often a result of drugs and alcohol. Child abuse is often a result of that. And so our society really has to begin to get a grip on what's going on. I don't ever want alcohol to be banned, like prohibition or anything like that. But I find even today, most people are quite ignorant about alcoholism or drug addiction. They're really quite ignorant about it, you know. And just talked to a father whose son just was in this horrible accident, very, very drunk. And the father said, well, he might have had a beer or two. Well, I know he had about 20 beers. And might have been driving a little fast. You know, that's about it. You really don't understand, you know?
Yeah.
And another one, a 19-year-old that Trish and I have talked about, I talked to his father, and the father said, well, you know, we all make mistakes once in a while. This is not a mistake, you know?
We
They don't
know
really
it's
understand.
family, we know it's generational, we know that it's learned behavior, we know that there is often a lot of trauma that goes on in individuals' lives. Again, like goes back to what I said, it's a coping mechanism. And so what we're really moving towards, and we want to do more of, is treating the family, because we know addiction is a family disease. It's not only the person, you know, plays a part who's the active addict, but there is the, you know, the there's a great story, is that the loved one about, you know, the addict falls off a cliff and then the codependent falls off the cliff trying to help the person. So I mean, it affects, and then it affects the kids, and the kids learn that when you're upset you can drink, or when you're upset you smoke weed, and so it's really helping the family.
It's very hard for people to understand that alcoholism or drug addiction is a family disease. But what happens is you put the, let's say, the alcoholic or the drug addict here. Well, then everybody's role in the family has to adjust to that.
Absolutely, and it all changes.
Right.
It all changes. Some families see that as a perfectly normal thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
And what it ends up doing is enabling the addict to keep going.
One person plays the rescuer,
Right,
another
right.
person's the enabler.
Sure. And that's what makes it a family disease. Because people often object, well, why should I have counseling? You know, he's the one who's the addict. Well, because this has affected how you play your role in the family, and you're not even conscious of that.
So it sounds like a key piece to this for the future is to raise awareness and educate people about addiction. Raising awareness, you folks have a fundraiser coming up.
We do.
Yes, we do. It's very exciting.
Yes, it's dining around the region, and we're having restaurants.
Yep, we're having restaurants, catering companies come in and set up, and so we can all taste their food. We have silent raffles. We have basket raffles. It's going to be a really great time. We'll have music.
Yep.
It's May 12th from 5 to 8, so we really hope that you all come. Tickets are $20. They can be paid in advance, $10 for children. So we're really hoping that everyone can come out and
And it's
support
at the
it.
Robb Alley in Proctor's Theater.
Right by the Muddy Cup.
Yeah,
Great.
right by the muddy
Cup.
cup. Right.
Now again, if someone wants to contact you folks to for themselves or for someone that they love, family, friend, how can someone reach out and to reach out to you or one of your staff members at New Choices?
They can just call us 346-4436. We also have a 24-hour hotline, so when you call that number 346-4436, you will be connected to a live person, and that person can assist you, whether it's help you get the detox in the moment or just kind of triage what your need is at the time.
Great. And again, I want to thank Father Hogan and Tricia Stamfley for joining us. I personally know the people that you not only help, but the lives that you change and save on a daily basis.
Thank you.
And until next time, I want to remind you, take it one day at a time, and denial only works for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.